Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 53, brought to you by the one and only Black Belt Magazine. And today we have the man himself, Danny Etkin, in the house. He's going to be talking about his new program, or website really, called Kicklink. This is going to be a product, or it is a product. It's already released. You guys can go check it out right now. That's going to connect martial arts students around the world with professional sport karate coaches to help them step their game up to the next level through private lesson training. We're going to be diving into all kinds of details about Kicklink and what inspired it and what the best features are. But first, let's learn a little bit more about Danny. So Danny, welcome to the show. I know this is your second appearance. You were on an earlier episode with Aiden Considine all the way back at episode 14 of the show. But go ahead and just kind of introduce the Black Belt Magazine audience to your journey and how you got started in the martial arts.
For sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Jackson, for having me on. I'm a big fan of the show, so it's pretty cool to be on. And of course, you know, we're friends, so I'm excited to have this opportunity to talk a little bit more about Kicklink and about some of the things that I'm doing. So I'm basically a world champion martial artist. I'm on Team Paul Mitchell. I've been on since 2015. I've been competing in NASCA since 2008. And yeah, that's kind of the general gist. But yeah, we can dive in a little bit deeper if you have any more specific questions.
So I just want to talk about your journey in sport karate a little bit, because a lot of our black belt audience may not be as familiar with sport karate and need some more backstory as to, you know, who you are and what you've done, right? And I know those accomplishments, but let's start with kind of your team affiliation, because you've been a part of several really cool teams throughout your career. Obviously, you started on, was it GKS was the name of the regional team, right? You can clear that up a little bit. And then 100% Performance, which was all-time great demo team, stacked roster, plenty of talent, onto Team Emig, which is going to bring us to one of our main topics today, is coaching and your relationship with Coach Matt Emig. And then, of course, moving on to Team Paul Mitchell. So maybe dive just a little bit deeper into that journey and going from a regional team to ultimately being recruited to one of, if not the greatest teams in sport karate history.
Yeah, for sure. So it started off with me just at my local karate school. And we started doing super local tournaments, even inter-school tournaments. And so that was, I guess, my first team. And but pretty soon after that, once I started getting into extreme karate, which was in 2008, so I was 8 years old back then, I ended up starting to train at this school in Connecticut, and I'm living in New York. So that was about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So I was super lucky to have amazing parents that would drive me there every Saturday, and we would train for 8 hours every Saturday. So that was kind of my intro into really training with other martial artists that were into extreme and creative and all that stuff. So that's what I was doing for about a year. And then quickly after, I started getting more serious with NASCA. And that was around the same time that Team 100% Performance started rising up. And they were a regional team more on the East Coast, but they were starting to pick up more heavy hitters on their team. People like Tyree Brown just joined right before me. And then, soon after, there were people like Mackenzie Emery who also joined. So I started in 2009 with Team 100%. And that was definitely probably the biggest catalyst for me as far as getting around a group of people that were training hard in extreme martial arts and really taking it seriously at a world level. So I was part of that kind of upbringing of the team from regional to world level. And so I was on that team for about 4 years or so. And maybe a little bit less, but it was a really amazing experience. We had these epic training sessions every week, super amazing summer camps where we would just go so hard with all the teammates. Literally, I remember passing out on the floor. That's how much I was worked. So from there, there came a point when the team kind of just decided that they were gonna finish off, and instead of dying out, we kind of wanted to finish on a bang. And so we finished at the US Open, and that was our last official tournament. And then 100% was no longer a team. And that was actually, like you said, one of the main things with 100% was the demo team. That's kind of what they're famous for. So we finished US Open with a demo team performance, and that was the end. And then so from there, I was on no team at all. And Mackenzie Emery was also on no team. So we both had the goal actually of getting on Paul Mitchell. It sounds really silly. This is really funny, actually. I'm kind of like hesitant to even say it because I'm cringing. But we had this like term, we had this like code name. We called it Operation Walnut, and we were like, we're gonna get on Team Paul Mitchell, Operation Walnut. And then so that was kind of like a joke, but it was like for real though, because we both really wanted to get on the team. And so I think at that point, Matt Emig, he was training me, he was training Kenzie, and Aiden, and he told Paul Mitchell, like, you got to pick these people up. They're on no team. They're winning. They're doing really well. Like, pick them up. And at that point, Paul Mitchell basically said no to Matt. And we didn't get picked up. And so eventually Matt said, all right, like, screw it. I'm going to start my own team with these people. And so that's how Team Emig was born. And so it was me, Kenzie, Aiden Considine, and Tyler Weaver, just a small team of 4. And, we ended up being such a great experience because, first of all, we were all really good friends. I've been friends with Kenzie since like the beginning of 100%, or when we joined, which was in 2009. So we're already really close. And then me and Aiden were training partners. We live pretty close to each other. We're both from New York. So we were already training every weekend. And then Tyler, I've known him forever too, just through things like Hyper and so forth. So it was a really nice, like, tight-knit group of people that were friends, but also like, killing it on the circuit. So it was a really good time. And we ended up doing like a lot of really fun things. We went to Puerto Rico together and taught seminars. We went to the Cayman Islands and taught and performed and all that stuff. And we ended up doing really well on the NASCAR circuit too. I think actually I forgot the exact stat, but I think we had like some of the most overalls actually, definitely per person on the team. Cause at least, we'd have like a couple overalls every single tournament with 4 people. A lot of the times we would each get an overall because we were in different divisions or more, so it was pretty stacked. But, eventually after a year, Paul Mitchell saw the greatness of Kenzie and Tyler, and then they picked them up. And then after that, Aiden injured himself. And so it was just a one-man army of me on the team. And this was, I believe, 2015. And one really cool thing that happened actually was I competed with Matt, my coach, Matt Emig, who's a member of Team Paul Mitchell, and we did a sync nunchuck form together, which was pretty much like, I pretty much started off doing this extreme stuff watching a YouTube tutorial that Matt posted, or somebody else posted of Matt doing a 540. That's how I even discovered extreme. So ending up doing a sync form with him was like, literally like probably my childhood like dream. Like I couldn't even imagine that. So that was really cool. And then eventually Aiden got better. And then, before you knew it, we got picked up on the team, I believe by the end of that year on Team Paul Mitchell. So yeah, that was super amazing. And feel free to like cut me off and ask any questions during, because I know I've been like talking a lot. But I'm trying to recap the past, decade, 15 years within like a few minutes. But yeah, Paul Mitchell was, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that we're going to see a lot of like some 9 to 15-year-old friend groups in their group chat. We're going to start seeing some Operation Walnut group chats popping up of people that want to get recruited to Paul Mitchell. And I know there's a lot of aspiring young sport karate athletes that watch the show. And one thing that Danny's kind of explaining through his story is sometimes getting on Team Paul Mitchell or any great team, but especially Team Paul Mitchell because their selection process is especially stringent. It's not just about earning, quote unquote, your position on the team. It's also about simply the timing being right. You mentioned when Kenzie and Tyler were recruited, I believe that was right around the time that we had Caitlin Deshelle retiring. So we needed that next great female competitor in the adult division, which was going to be Mackenzie moving up. One thing that you didn't mention, maybe just because you were being humble, but I'm going to brag about it, is that Team Emig brought about a great sync form between you and Aiden Considine, right? And I think that you and Aiden Considine having that firepower sync form that you guys had played a big role in helping Paul Mitchell eventually be like, hey, we can win sync forms with these guys too, right? So I think that there were a lot of factors there that came into play and ultimately got you guys the spot that you deserve, which is to represent Team Paul Mitchell. But just a lesson out there for anybody watching, sometimes it's not about anything that you're doing. You just got to be in the right place at the right time, and that's when those type of opportunities can come up. But the more important thing that we hear about there is, the start of your relationship and then kind of the full circle story with Matt Emig leading up to you doing the sync form with him at US Open. So take us back to the beginning of that relationship with Matt. You said you watched the video of him teaching a technique on YouTube or whatever, and then he became your coach and the coach of your team, somebody helping you, pushing you to get on Paul Mitchell, right? So just tell us kind of your story alongside Matt and the type of impact that a coach like that had on your career.
Totally. Yeah. Matt had a huge is like an understatement, like the impact on my career. Like he taught me pretty much everything from back when I was doing Kyokushin karate and had no skill at all, basically, up to like where I am at this point generally. So, he's been huge, massive influence on not only my sport karate career, but I would say he's one of the biggest influences on me just as a person in general, just giving me like key life skills and showing me what drive is and like attention to detail and so many things like that. So, and any coach or any student or athlete will say the same thing about their coach, I think, no matter if it's an NBA player or, a football player that's, got an amazing coach that helped them win Super Bowl. The coach is a transformative person in an athlete's life. And I can definitely attest to that in my own life. When I started training with Matt, it actually started off, I saw a video of him doing a 540 tutorial on YouTube back when YouTube was, just kind of beginning almost. And it was on the Billy Bylang channel, which had tons of tutorials from great martial artists. And so I saw this 540 tutorial and I was in my basement at the time and I tried to do it and I couldn't do it. But eventually I started, kind of learning. But that introduced me like, okay, who's this Matt Emig guy? Let me see if he has any other videos. And then so I saw that he did all these forms and I was like, wow, that's like so amazing. I need to do that. And then the more I kept looking at that and just kind of searching around on YouTube, I found out that in my opinion, the best competitors had this Paul Mitchell logo on their back. And so pretty much immediately, it was my goal to one day get on the team. But basically how I got introduced to Matt is I went to the New England Open in 2008 and my grandpa actually came over from England at the time. And so he came up with me and my family to the tournament. And he knew that I was like obsessed with Matt's forms and all that. And so after he competed on stage on the nighttime finals on Saturday, he was still like sweating and like, catching his breath and stuff. And my grandpa was like, go over there and like take a picture. And I was, way too shy to like ever do that by myself. But he pushed me. Like he was like, we got to do this, And so eventually I ended up taking a picture that I still have to this day with me in like super spiky hair and a blue gi. And then before you know it, my parents ended up getting into contact with him through email and we started training. But that was actually right when he had his big knee injury and he tore his ACL and all that stuff. So we were just about to teach a lesson and then we got an email basically saying like, hey, sorry, but Matt actually totally busted his knee and he was like, so out. So that was before we even had our first lesson. And I remember at the time I was like, I was like heartbroken. I was like, oh, like this is like the worst thing, because I was so excited to train with my idol. And then we ended up still doing lessons. Anyways, we decided I'm just gonna still do it. And like at that point, he couldn't even like walk or anything. Like he would like try to show me something, like slip or but it doesn't even matter, because at the end of the day, it was the knowledge that he gave me that helped me get to the point that I am. And I I could go on forever about how much Matt's helped me, but since we started training in 2008, we've done so many things. He's helped me I am, and we've even had the opportunity to literally travel around the world together, performing and teaching. So yeah, it's been pretty amazing.
And you mentioned, just to give a little bit of historical context, you mentioned Matt blowing his knee out. And then Matt would go on to wind up having probably, arguably, the greatest comeback from an injury that any sport karate competitors ever had. Because many would say that his career post blowing out his knee was better than his career leading up to blowing out his knee, right? He became more dominant. The forms got even better. He tried even more difficult skills. So Matt post the knee injury was this like another animal from the all-time great competitor that he had already been before. People talk about how like Tom Brady had like 3 different Hall of Fame careers. You can very clearly say how Matt Emig had 2 different Hall of Fame careers, pre-knee injury and post-knee injury. It's right up there with Raymond Daniels coming back from the Achilles rupture and then being able to win overall grands after that. So just to give some historical context to that knee injury wound up becoming one of the greatest comeback stories in sport karate history. But you mentioned that the knowledge that Matt gave you and the life skills that he gave you, and obviously it worked for you because it made you into a world champion competitor, and Matt's had many other students that have become world champion competitors as well. So in your opinion, in your storyline, what do you feel was it about Matt's coaching that was so effective? Was it the way he broke things down? Was it strategy? What was it that you think was kind of the key factor that pushed you, that helped you reach the level that you would ultimately reach?
Definitely comes down to some type of phony. He was legit. Like first of all, he practiced what he preached. He wasn't just telling me, oh, you got to train like this, you got to train like that. I was there witnessing him from literally basically being a cripple, not even able to stand up. Doctors telling him, no joke, you're never going to jump again. Back into being the best sport martial artist of all time, better than before. So that's what I was witnessing. That was my coach. Okay, so that was pretty good motivation to see what drive and willpower really means. So he was legit. And also he talked like very straight. He was, if he told me that this was like his famous words is like, I would do like something that I was like really proud of, and you say, that was decent. That was decent. Like I can just remember him saying that so many times. But he would give me like very, very detailed, specific things that I had to work on. And one of the best things about, I think, Matt as a martial artist is sometimes when you get a little bit better, you kind of see these people that you thought were really good, and then you're like, oh, like, I don't know, like maybe like as you get better, that magic disappears a little bit. But for me, when I got better, the more I appreciated how good Matt was. So he was like really very detail oriented, and I think that definitely spread on to me as well. And he always gave me homework too. So he said, this is your homework, you need to do it by next session. And so I would do it, and he would generally or genuinely be like very motivated for my own growth. It wasn't just like we did a lesson then it's over, but I'd send in videos and he like really wanted to see me grow, not for any selfish reason or anything, but because like this is what he wanted. And I think just a mixture of that pretty much is what motivated me. Yeah.
For sure. And to me, what stands out is a few key features there, right? Number one, practicing what you preach, right? When you tell a student to do something, making sure that you demonstrate that in your own life, in your own training regimen as well. Number two, the never being satisfied, right? Even when you do something really good, always pushing you to reach another level, just like he was doing in his own career. And then number three, the care for the student, giving the homework, the follow-up, the consistently charting the progress. To me, those are kind of the three main cornerstones of any great coach. And Matt seemed to have demonstrated all of those beautifully within you. And now that brings me to your new product, Kicklink.co. So we're going to link it in the description of this video as well, the description of this podcast episode. So after this episode is over, after you guys hear what Danny has to say, make sure that you guys go ahead and click that link and go check out Kicklink.co. Really cool product. And Danny, now you're giving students all over the world the opportunity to find that coach for them, to find that person that can help them become successful. And we both agree how important the role of the coach is, especially to a sport karate athlete where, admittedly, we're a tight-knit, small sport, right? And in order to become one of the absolute best in this sport, you've got to be in it for the long haul, and you've got to have somebody that you trust that's been there, done that, right? And that's what these coaches can provide. So before we get into any specifics, just kind of give us a general overview. What is Kicklink?
So Kicklink is a platform that connects martial arts students and coaches. You can kind of think of it like it's an Airbnb for finding a martial arts coach. It's pretty much the same function. So you can search coaches, you can filter price, you can filter the categories of the different type of specialties of martial arts. And then every coach has a profile with all of the relevant information, videos of themselves, and then even an ability to book them right then and there on a calendar, which shows their availability. And then you can even just pay. So, and message the coaches all on the platform. So pretty much anything that you would need to set up a lesson with a top level coach, you can do on Kicklink within a few clicks. So that's pretty much the basic functionality of Kicklink.
Absolutely. It's just a super cool product. Like you mentioned, when you first got in touch with Matt, it was like you had to see him at a tournament, and then you got the photo, and then eventually your parents got in contact with email, and then you set up the lesson over email. There's just all these different steps that used to have to happen for a private lesson to actually occur, right? I went through the same thing with my coach, Lauren Carney, right? Meet him in person, send emails, figure it out, book this, book that, set up the Skype call, and obviously now everybody does Zoom and FaceTime and all that. But you know what I'm saying? It was always just this multi-step process. And in my opinion, the best thing that Kicklink does is it streamlines all of that, right? The scheduling, the communication, the payment, it's all in one place, which makes it so much easier to book private lessons with a number of great sport karate athletes. Which leads me to the question, where did the inspiration come from? Was that just you recognized how difficult it was to go through all those steps to book lessons? Where was the spark that ignited Kicklink?
Totally. So being a martial arts coach myself and being in the industry, I kind of over time saw this problem on both sides. For me, like I said, I had my grandpa, that came from England that made me introduce myself to Matt. And then I had parents that followed up with him. And then, somebody how did they get, I don't even know how they got his contact information, right? That was probably before Facebook was even a thing. So, the stars literally had to align for me to be in contact with Matt Emig. And a lot of the time too, I feel like that's kind of how it is. Like even some of my own students, their stories for how they got in contact with me are like so elaborate. Like I'm in this karate school who has this instructor who knows this person who is like friends with somebody that who referred you to me. It's like, dude, like that's just crazy. And meanwhile, the whole time they wanted to train with me, but they didn't know how to get in contact with me. So that's pretty much the reason as far as the student side, because I found out there's a lot of students actually that want to train with a world champion coach and they want to get better and their parents are willing to do so, but they don't know where to start. And especially if you're not traveling on the circuit and you don't have either you or yourself have that like confidence to go up to a world champion and ask like, hey, can you teach me? Because, that would be a very intimidating question for me to ask my idols that I'm looking up to, especially when I see them warming up for their divisions and doing stuff. So, even if you're at the tournament, it's still like, it can be a little intimidating to do so. And you don't know what they're like, if they even want to train you, and you don't want, what's the worst thing that could happen? You get rejected from your idol, right? So like, there's so many barriers to entry as far as getting in contact with a coach, let alone one that you actually really look up to. So my goal with this platform is to make it so that the stars don't have to align for you to get a coach, so that you can find all of the world-class coaches that are literally saying, I'm willing to teach you. And all you have to do is just go to the platform, go to kicklink.co, and you can find that coach. And then within a matter of minutes, you can basically set yourself up with a lesson with them. So that's my main motivation as far as the student side. And of course, on the coaches side too, coaches want to be able to get their services out to more martial arts students. So, there's the problem on both sides. The students wanted to get in contact with the coaches, and the coaches, obviously, they're coaches. They want to have students. So it just seemed like a very natural fit for me to be the middleman in those transactions.
Absolutely. And I think it's clear that the best feature of the platform is the product that it provides, that problem that it solves, that allows the students to get in contact with the coaches and the coaches to find the students so much more easily. But now, speaking a little bit more specifically about the functionality of the site, what are some of your favorite features? Just like little things in the process of building the website that you thought were really user-friendly and that you encourage anybody watching this to head on and hit the link and check out those couple of features.
Mm-hmm. So I think generally the main thing is it's very intuitive. It's very easy to use. And I honestly think that the best feature out of all of them, it's a very simple feature, but just the basic filtering is like so awesome, because if you want to have a traditional kata instructor, you just click on traditional kata instructor, and right there's Olympic traditional kata instructors, like world champion, USA, NKF traditional people. Same thing for fighting. If you want a point fighter, immediately you're going to see Bailey Murphy, you're going to see Morgan Plowden, you're going to see all the top fighters in the industry. So it's like if you have a specific category that you want, you're just going to click that, and all the best literally in the industry pretty much are going to be there waiting for you. And more people are joining every single day. So I think that's the best feature. But of course, I think the calendar is super amazing too, because even for me, even with students I already have, it can take days to set up a lesson. Even if you do get in contact with them, oh, what's your time zone? When are you around? Oh, I have school that time. There's so many different things. They have to read the message. And so before you know it, it could take a few days to even just kind of set up a time where for Kicklink, it takes as long as it takes for you to click the date and time that you want. And the coach literally just has to click accept, or they could message you back immediately on the platform and say, hey, for some reason, the time that I said is available is not available, and then let's adjust it. But generally, it's going to be very simple like that. So I think those are probably my two favorite features.
Yeah, those are great tools. Just the usability of it, and then especially the calendar. Like when I set up my own lessons, I'm always like on a Yahoo calendar and going back and forth with Facebook messages. So I can definitely see how that makes that process a lot easier. And you bring up something that I wanted to throw in there if the opportunity presented itself. Danny Etkin mentioned Bailey Murphy. If you guys are looking for a point fighting lesson, I scrolled through the whole Kicklink site. I promise this isn't paid advertisement. I scrolled through the whole Kicklink site. Bailey Murphy for $80 an hour is a steal. That is the bargain of the website. If you can get Bailey Murphy for $80 an hour. So you guys, if you want point fighting lessons, that's a great value. There's other great point fighters on the website as well that I definitely encourage you guys to go and check out. Danny, you mentioned Morgan Plowden. She's the best female point fighter on the planet right now.
We have Christian Rivas also, and he just won point. I'm Pro Point 3. So winner of Pro Point 3. That's crazy, and he's also $75 on the platform. So it's like just a crazy steal. I would say right now, point fighting is really strong on the platform. So especially to the point fighters out there. I mean, we definitely have some great forms coaches, extreme and traditional as well. But the point fighters, like I was looking through that today, actually, I'm like, wow, like these are some of the best right now that are on there. And tricking too. We have Adrenaline Pro athletes on there. One that I really think is cool is we have Tiki Wu, who is stomping quadruple fulls. That's a backflip with 4 twists. Cheat 1620s. Okay, that's 4 twists and a round kick off of 1 foot. That's like insane. And of course, we have people like Dan Perez too, which literally he created TKT, which stands for True Kicking Terminology, which is the terminology used by almost all martial arts schools to even label their tricks. Okay, so that is the tier of people that are on the platform and who can literally be your private coach holding your hand to get you to the level that there are other students who are world champions and top level athletes have become. So, yeah.
And definitely a decorated list of coaches. And it's interesting, I've noticed over the past several months, the point fighters are really go-getters in terms of teaching and in the business side of sport karate. I see point fighters all the time promoting, I'm doing this seminar, or book me for private lessons, all this. And so I wish that sometimes forms and weapons competitors would show a little bit more of that hustle and that heart, right? We see point fighters all the time out there promoting themselves and doing right by themselves and trying to turn their passion. I think that you've got a little slogan behind this, right? Trying to turn their passion into professionalism or something like that, right? Passion into income, something of that nature, right? Get paid for your passion, something like that. What is it?
Yeah, passion to a paycheck.
Passion to a paycheck. I could not think of that for the life of me, but I love that. I think that works.
Passion to a paycheck.
Yeah. I think that works great. I could not think of that for the life. But anyway,
yeah.
So we talk about all of the different coaches on the platform. Now, if there's anybody watching this that is a higher level sport karate competitor, obviously probably want to be a black belt, have experience competing, you can apply to be a coach on the site as well, correct? So go ahead, and for anybody watching that might want to be a coach on the site, go ahead and tell us how you go about that and how that works.
Yeah, so we are still onboarding some coaches. Obviously, we're keeping the standard very high. But we welcome anybody to apply. Obviously, a few just ground rules. You got to be a black belt. You have to be at least 18 years or older to join the platform, and preferably with some coaching experience and some credentials in some way. But if you're under that category, then we definitely recommend that you apply to the platform. You can go to kicklink.com and it's right on the top there. It just says apply to coach or become a coach, and it'll bring you to a quick little application form, very quick. And from there, we'll send you basically an email stating if you got accepted or not. So it's very easy, very intuitive. And yeah, we suggest that everybody applies.
That's great. And I think that's a great opportunity. When you talked to me a little bit about the platform before it ever got released, one of the things that I thought was so great about it is that a lot of these younger competitors, the 16, 17-year-olds that are going to be moving up into the adult division, like you said, you got to be 18. But for those 16, 17-year-olds that are moving up into the adult division, going to be turning 18 in the next year or so, I think this is an excellent opportunity for them who have not been as familiar with the process of booking private lessons, right? Like, I've been doing this since I was 14 years old. And so, I have it like down to a science, the way that, when somebody contacts me, I can get them booked and get them on my schedule and things of that nature. But people that are newer to teaching private lessons in the first place may not have that background knowledge. They just won't have that background knowledge, right? And so I think this is an excellent product for them because they can use this product to make it so much easier to learn basic business negotiations, right? How to get clients, how to convert purchases. And I think that's one of the great things about the platform is that it helps more young professional sport martial artists learn how to coach, not just obviously teaching the martial arts, but actually how to get the bookings and things of that nature. I think that that's a really, really important aspect of the site that I think is great for the future of sport karate. And that brings us to another interesting point. So now let's say little Johnny's watching the podcast right now, and little Johnny decides that, like, you know what, I'm going to go on Kicklink and I'm going to find me a coach, right? What would be your best advice to little Johnny trying to find his first coach?
So my advice would be to look through a lot of coaches. And then once you do that, go for it. Just you're never going to know really until you have that lesson. And one thing that I would say actually is don't be afraid to try out a few different people. Even me, I tried out a few different coaches, and a lot of them were great martial artists, top level. people that you would know. And I trained with them. Actually, I had a couple lessons with them before I trained with Matt. And that's not to say that, diminishing their martial arts capabilities at all, but you want to find that perfect fit for you. And so after I tried a few different lessons, I eventually came to Matt, and, that was just like, immediately I knew that was a coach for me. So I would suggest, it's in your interest and in the coach's interest to find that perfect fit. So I wouldn't be afraid of, if you're, trying to get in this, and if you're serious about this, you're thinking about the long term. So you want to find that person that's good for you, and it's definitely worth it to try out a few different people. If that first coach, like maybe you're thinking, yeah, that was really great, but maybe I could see what this person's style is. I would suggest doing that, because this is a relationship that potentially is going to last your martial arts career. So that would be one of my big suggestions.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. It's important to find the right coach. And sometimes you've got to go through a couple of different steps to get there. And that doesn't mean that one coach is quote unquote better than the other. It might just be a better fit for that particular athlete, right? So now on the flip side of that coin, what would you say is a common mistake that you see people make? And I guess to preface that and take some of the pressure off you a little bit, one common mistake that I see is sometimes people try out too many coaches for too long and wind up spreading themselves thin, right? Like I've had situations before where, not necessarily somebody that I've been coaching, but, I've seen a student have like 3 or 4 different coaches. And it's one thing when it's like you have your tricking coach and your traditional forms coach and then maybe like your weapons coach. That's different. But sometimes I've seen students that have like 2 or 3 coaches that all work on the extreme form. And a lot of times that can get stressful for a student, because they're like, wait, Mr. So-and-so told me this, but Miss So-and-so told me that. Now I don't know what to do. And so don't spread yourself too thin. Absolutely try a bunch of different coaches and see which coach works best for you. But try not to have too many coaches working on the same routine, because every coach is going to have stylistic differences in opinion. And ultimately that's going to confuse the student more than it's going to help the student. So that's my 2 cents on like a common mistake that I see, is people trying to spread the wealth too much and work with too many people on the same things. Are there any common mistakes that you think that people should watch out for and avoid when they're trying to find that coach?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I don't want to sound like you're supposed to get all these different coaches by trying them out. You try them out, but once you find your coach, that's your coach. And you have to take complete shelter under them. You like 100%, like no questions asked, like this is your coach, and whatever they tell you to do, you have to have that trust. That's why it's important to find the right coach, because you have to get to the point with your coach that you take complete shelter, literally shelter underneath them. Whatever they tell you to do, you must do it. No questions asked. Okay, that's what you do. And that's what a coach is, and that's what a good student does. So I would say what you said is definitely probably the most important thing. Have one coach per category. Maybe you have a very multi-talented coach that can help you in different things. But in general, it's very rare to find a point fighting and forms coach, for example, that is top level in both. They are out there, but very rare. So, in that circumstance, sure, you have your point fighting coach and you have your forms coach. But you definitely, like you said, do not want to have multiple extreme forms coaches, because that's only going to mess you up. And I've seen it mess people up before. They think that quantity equals more quality, but actually it's going to be very confusing. And it's going to be a big mess. So yeah, pick your coach. Besides that, I would say, as far as picking your coach, have the one coach, find a coach that fits you. But once you actually find that coach, 2 important things is, one, like I said, you got to do the homework. Okay. One way to tell if a coach is, qualified is they give you some type of action steps at the end of a lesson. That might be a formal, like, okay, here's your schedule, or it could just be, this is what I want you to work on for next session. And here's some things that you should be doing when you're not outside of our session. That could manifest in a lot of different ways, but they should have some form of, here's what you should be working on. And so when they tell you that, whether it's a schedule or just a little bit more general, you must do it. Okay. You have to do it. And that was actually what Matt said was the thing that made me stand out, because he had so many different students. Probably he taught like probably thousands of people. He said the one thing that made me stand out, and I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or anything right now. I'm just trying to be, real. This is what he told me. The one thing that made me stand out is I actually just did what he told me to do. That was it. That was literally it. If he told me to do something, I would actually go home and do the homework and come back with it. So that's like the number one thing. If you just simply do what the coach tells you to do, which sounds simple, but sometimes easier said than done. That's going to be the best thing that you can do. And then besides that, get on a consistent training schedule. It's going to be really important that you meet up with your coach. I would say at least once a week. And because if you're meeting up more, like less than that, then it's going to be really hard to find that accountability, and it's going to be a lot easier to slack off. And in your life, no matter what you're doing, it's very important to have systems holding you accountable to make sure that you're doing things. Because unless you have that really gung-ho, amazing discipline, which most people don't, you can get motivated and do it for a few weeks or maybe even a few months. But we're talking long term, okay? We're talking about consistency over years and years and years. And so it's really very nearly, and I would say it's actually impossible to do that without some type of accountability. So you want your accountability from the most qualified person, and that's going to be your coach. So that's why it's very important to meet up with your coach on a consistent training schedule. So I'd say those are my two things: meet up with the coach consistently, and also make sure that you do exactly what they tell you to do.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, that's something that I do with all of my students. They either meet with me on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, or maybe in a few instances on a monthly basis. But I think it's extremely important to have that consistency with students so that the students can continue to be checked on and make sure they're progressing the way they should. Homework can be updated, because sometimes it only takes a week to get a new skill. You need something new by the time that another week passes, right? And that's going to ultimately lead to the most progress. So I think that that's great advice there. We've been giving a lot of advice to the students, but I also want to talk about giving some advice to the coaches as well, because there's a mix of the more seasoned coaches and the more green coaches on the site. And for anybody that's looking through the site that's looking for a coach, sometimes the benefit of having somebody that's a little bit newer is, number one, you're going to get a little bit more of a bargain, right? So that's a way that you can kind of scope out who's got more coaching experience or less. Not always. It's not a perfect metric. There are going to be coaches that are very experienced that offer lessons at a lower rate. But a lot of times you can tell by the rate how much experience somebody has in a rough manner. Also, I love the fact that on the website, Danny, there's descriptions that the coaches have submitted that tell you a little bit about them. That allows you to see the personality so that you can tell, like as a parent, you can tell, is that personality going to mesh well with my kid, my student, right? That's something that's really important. So there definitely are benefits to getting a coach that is a little bit more green as opposed to one of the more seasoned coaches. But speaking as the owner and the founder of Kicklink to some of those newer coaches that are going to be getting into the coaching industry, because it's now so much easier to get into the industry, what do you think your best advice is for some of those newer coaches?
So I would say my best piece of advice is to really think of yourself as because that's what you are. If you're not a professional as a coach, then where's your value at? You want to treat it like a job. So when you go to work, you go there on time. You wear your gear. Maybe that's a team shirt. You hold yourself to high standards and treat it like a job. And if you're like an entrepreneur, which is, in a sense is kind of what you are, you're like a freelancer. Don't be afraid to ask for the sale. That's what I would say. Don't be afraid to ask for the sale, because at the end of the day, if you don't think that you are giving any value as a coach, then you shouldn't be a coach. So if you are actually putting yourself out there as a coach, that means that you must think that you're actually giving somebody value. So if you see a student that has a lot of untapped potential and they currently don't have that person in their life that's helping them achieve their potential, you should see that as your obligation, as your duty to help somebody on their path, doing your expertise and what your passion is. So I would say don't be afraid to go and approach people. And it's not like sleazy or anything. Some people get very scared to approach people. But I think I really believe that comes from a wrong mindset, because if you're going into it thinking about taking, then you are going to have that feeling of feeling a little bit sleazy, like going out there and asking for the sale. But if you have the attitude and confidence within yourself that you're going to provide so much value, you're going in there thinking about giving. I want to give this person so much value, and I'm going to change their life. I'm going to make them the best martial artists that I'm going to blow their mind. You know, in their first session, they're going to get 10 times the value that they paid. And over the course of their life, they're not only going to become a better martial artist beyond their wildest dreams, but they're also going to turn into a champion of a person too. So that's the attitude that you should have. And unless you're at that level of confidence, which of course you will build over time, you know, you got to ask yourself, are you really qualified to coach? So if you are qualified to coach, I think there's no shame in going ahead and, you know, getting those clients and putting yourself out there and showing what you're, you know, having that confidence in yourself to realize the value that you could give somebody, despite if they pay you or not.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. In fact, that was the exact take that I was going to give about this topic, is focus on the value that you are going to be giving. Don't get into it because you look at it as a way to use karate to make money, right? Because the people that look at it as a way to use karate to make money, number one, their prices are often way too high, right? And number two, they don't feel as genuine, right? The teaching isn't about the student. The teaching is about the coach, and that's how it should never be, right? So for anybody that's new to coaching, that is the number one thing. Teach because you are passionate. Do not teach just because you think it's another way to generate revenue for yourself, right? Focus on the product that you are giving. And then absolutely, if you need that extra money and you want to make that extra money, coaching can be a great way to do that, but that should not be the sole thing that is driving your teaching. It should be based on passion and the willingness to help others and to help others have a great career in sport karate, and then the money will come. I always cite a quote that my dad gave me for my entire childhood, and that's, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Right? And so as long as you love what you do, you're going to continue to have those opportunities, and those opportunities will come to you. And so now, Danny, I want to go ahead and switch over, and it looks like our stream might actually be freezing up a little bit, so I'm going to allow that to correct itself here. A little bit of technical difficulties here on set. Welcome back to the Jackson Rudolph podcast, everybody. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. The first major technical difficulty that we've ever had here on the show. So we're finishing the show from my phone. We're going to persevere. We're going to make this happen, which is why my studio no longer looks as good as it used to, because you can see the ceiling. But it's okay. We're going to make this work. We're going to be true martial artists and persevere through this issue and make it happen. So anyway, just to round out what I was saying right before we lost connection there, is basically the motto that I want to share for any coaches is, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? So make sure that if you're getting into coaching, if you're getting into this industry, that you really love coaching and sharing the martial arts with other people. That is the most important thing that I want everybody to remember that's going to be entering this Kicklink platform as a coach. Now, I want to go ahead and transition for more of our black belt audience that maybe hasn't heard of Danny Etkin before. I want to make sure that everybody knows that you definitely know what you're talking about, right? You're somebody that has won Warrior Cups, you've won the US Open, you've won Diamond Nationals, you've won many, if not all, of the major sport karate tournaments that exist, right? So just to kind of reflect on your career a little bit, I'm going to make you brag on yourself here. I know you're humble, but I'm going to make you brag. Just take us through, you know, some of the career highlights and some of the greatest blessings that you've encountered through your career, and how that felt.
Yeah. So, I mean, at every stage, there's always those wins that kind of happen. Like when you start off, you just want to get top 8. And then, you know, so every time that you hit one of those goals, it's always a big feeling of satisfaction and achievement. Some of my biggest ones over my career include winning triple ISCA, which is triple US Open, in the same US Open tournament. That one was really cool for me because not many people have done it. I think probably, I mean, I actually tried to do some research on how many people have done it. And there's like 3, like in history, that have done it. And even still, finding one in forms, weapons, and sync, like what I did, is even harder to find. So, you know, it could be like 1 of 2 people to do that. within, I don't know how long US Open's been around, but a while. So that's been a good one for me. And then, I've won 4 Warrior Cups, so I say I can make a bed with my Warrior Cups, which is pretty cool. And then a few diamond rings, things like that. So yeah, those have been some of my highlights as far as wins go.
Mm-hmm. What's funny is I make that same Warrior Cup joke all the time, but my fiance Gabrielle is adamant that we will never have a Warrior bed. But even though I think it'd be cool, but anyway, and yeah, it's interesting you talk about that U.S. Open record. I think because I did it in what year was that? Was that 2015 maybe? I think it was 2015. Don't quote me on that. They had a traditional weapons ISK, so I won the traditional, I won the CMX, and then I won the Sync. I think that one was with Kyle. Yeah, I won that one with Kyle Montagna before I won with Jake. Obviously, you won Forms, Weapons, and Sync with Aiden.
Yep.
And then I think Caitlin Deschelle did it. Caitlin Deschelle might be the other one to have done.
You won, I believe, Weapons and then 2 synchronized divisions because she did synchronized weapons and synchronized forms.
Oh,
so that was her triple.
Yeah. So it's also kind of cool that. Yeah, that's cool. It's also kind of cool that like the 3 people that we know to have done it in completely different ways. Like that's a really interesting little bit of history there. But anyway, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share some of your best accomplishments so that everybody that's watching this knows you're the real deal. You know what you're talking about, and you're certainly doing a great thing for the sport karate community by bringing this product of Kicklink. And that's kind of the last thing I want to talk about is just the future. So I'll start more generally. How do you assess the current state of sport karate with everything that's gone on over the course of 2020 and the pandemic? And obviously an unprecedented year for everybody, not just within our sport, but certainly presents some new challenges for our sport. How do you view the state of sport karate now and looking forward into the future?
Mm-hmm. So obviously there's a lot of challenges as far as competing in person, but I also do, looking on the silver lining of this whole situation, which I know is a lot of the time very hard to do. But if you want to look at the silver lining, I believe that actually is very strong. It is there because of this whole situation, there's been people that are actually getting creative and doing more things to the sport and being entrepreneurial and starting to do projects like, even what you and Sammy just did with CMX University. That's really cool. That's an amazing step for the sport. Podcasts like this, even just having like the athlete profiles, that's like huge for the sport. And I think that this time is definitely a catalyst for things like that. And so, I hope that Kicklink can definitely be a part of that wave that helps to legitimize the sport even more and connects more and more people and hopefully, brings the best out of the next generation by getting them in contact with top level coaches.
Mm, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, that's something that I've been blessed with throughout this time is the ability to create some more of those online platforms for sport karate. Anybody watching, get on over to blackbeltmag.com. You click the little hamburger menu in the top left corner, scroll on down to sport karate, and you can get all types. You get news on sport karate events. You can look at the athlete profiles. You can also look at the official Black Belt Magazine World Sport Karate Rankings, which was made with consideration of every major league that is involved worldwide in sport karate competition. That's how those rankings were determined, with the 2019 U.S. Open champions holding the champion rank, just because that was the most uniform way to do it. Danny, obviously, with your Kicklink product, Sammy Smith and I launching Sport Karate University. You're right. I mean, this has been such a great time for so many new projects to benefit the community to be launched. And now I just hope that the sport continues to use those projects and use those tools to continue to help the sport grow in the future. And I think that that's the most important thing. So fast forward 10 years from now, right, which hopefully Kicklink will still be going strong 10 years from now. That's not the end of the road or anything. But looking back to a day like today when Kicklink is launching and we're promoting it here on Black Belt Magazine, what type of impact do you see for Kicklink over the next decade that's going to help sport martial artists everywhere? Just kind of sum that up and put a pretty little bow on everything.
So I hope that, first of all, I guess, maybe a little bit selfishly, I want to really impact the sport martial arts community specifically, because that's the community that's made the biggest impact on me. So I really want to provide a lot of opportunities for the sport martial arts community, helping people get into the sport, and also helping the coaches use our favorite slogan again, turn that passion to a paycheck. Because I believe if you want to be a coach, that's an amazing thing. And I really hope that qualified coaches can get to that stage of actually being able to turn that into even a real full-time job if they want to. And, it really is possible. It really is. So I hope that I can assist the sport martial arts coaches doing that. But then also, of course, I want to expand more than just sport martial arts. My big goal is, you want to have a martial arts coach. It doesn't matter if you're the adult whose parents never let you do martial arts and you decide that now you want to take it up, or you want to become the next world champion. It doesn't matter. I hope that Kicklink can be that place that provides you the opportunity to achieve your martial arts goals no matter what level you're at.
I think that's great. It's a great message. And I think that's why everybody, as soon as this podcast ends, go ahead and check out kicklink.co. We will be sure to link that in the description, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube. So just go ahead, hit that link in the description. You can check out kicklink.co. Excellent platform that's going to help the future of sport karate. Also, an announcement for the Jackson Rudolph podcast, episode 54, coming up next week. We're going to be doing a Valentine's Day special. My fiance and fellow world champion, member of Team AKA, captain of Team AKA, Gabrielle Dunn, is going to be on the show for a special Valentine's Day episode. So I hope that you guys all check that out and enjoy that. And we need questions from you guys. If you guys have questions, feel free to go ahead and drop those in the comments for Gabrielle and I to cover in episode 54. But otherwise, Danny, thank you so much for your time here on episode 53. Really appreciate it. And I really appreciate this product that you're sharing with the entire sport karate community. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in today. I'm Jackson Rudolph, and this has been episode 53 of the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I'll see you next time.